me 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Whenever you're ready.
You all good? Advantage 1 is accountability. X stands for judicial oversight is key to neutral decision-making, accountability, and legitimacy. Edinburgh 12. Bringing the court to the current inter-executive process is unlawful, also dangerous. The inter-branch process is not neutral. Even fair adjudicators disqualified the original political branch to switch the Constitution off. Will they say if the law is this relevant to terror killing? The absence of any neutral decision-maker outside the executive is a clear violation. Secrecy is made to pull against the interest of deliberative review. The inter-branch process is entirely exclusive, not proven to check power. Any post-formation process such as Bivens and also problematic process would be meaningless. The way to successful attack judicial control can increase accuracy. Independent judges double check for catch errors and cause efficient would make them judges knowledgeable and accustomed to deal with security to make them ideal candidates reforming the process would restore SOP and increase legitimacy by replacing these entire constitutional grounds. And inter-executive processes are prone to error. The plan is keto accountability. GM 12. Cognitive illusions, spreads errors, inductive groupthink, and hammer deliberation. Decision makers seek out data that confirm their beliefs and failures of past presidents who consider alternatives to info. Has produced blunders, including Iraq, the Vietnam, notion of giving the president authority and assassination can increase errors, mistakes, or inevitable. The executive decision-making site literature emphasizes accountability mechanisms in which a real decision-making can flourish, require formalized way prior to technical good and more reliable informed deliberation. The impact is collapse of Yemen, Farley 12. Effective accountability constraints freedom of use force through electoral sanctioning, violating calls makers to choosing force only in the manners authorized. Accountability, avoidance, skills, increased risk taking, and policy failure, increased uses, maybe contributing to instability. The contentious impacts of the relationships attributable to strikes. The destabilizing influence of Yemen will be mitigated by fewer ops, and there will be fewer policymakers who are controlled by accountability mechanisms. The president with the uncontrollability to is likely to lead more likely the nation to war, and that spills over the Horn of Africa. At already said the health of many systems is getting worse. Trends have reversed. The Eastern countries are likely to follow the same path as Somalia and will lead to further instability and strengthening terrorist activities with the government's consequences for the Horn of Africa. The impact is global conflict. Haber 10. The importance of Yemen cannot be underestimated because Yemen can become the next station point for operations against West weak states, create pockets susceptible to terrorism, prolonged disease, and instability. They serve as breeding grounds for the new diseases and endanger the rest of the world. Conflicts until neighbor countries and energies and external intervention. The American better example in Yemen. And unaccountable drone use directly collapses forces that underpin U.S. legitimacy. Kennedy 13. Legitimacy will have repercussions for foreign policies without any option that are tenable to propose the U.S. troops, alliances, global opinion, international stability, drones, refueling, anti-American resentment, religious questions raised as if drones endanger vital relationships, the questions support for rule issues appear violated. The gap between state core policies appears to be hypocritical. The divide is exacerbated by drones. Such will undermine the desire to export liberal democratic principles, commit efficient and achieve adequate victories, setting an example of restraint and legitimacy is key to hegemony, which is key to global stability, French great power war, Fujimoto 12. The emergence of current commanders represents the greatest long threat to political order of the U.S. gap strategy, building legitimacy and institutions to protect our interests in liberal global contracts. Another peer competitor directs U.S. global influence. This combined influence threatens significant conflict and ultimately leads to a paradigm shift in the principles that govern the world order. A grand strategy of investment requires building legitimacy. Effort to legitimize the liberal world is a doctrine that avoids the alienation of allies worldwide. A world order would garner support from regional powers, countering China's hegemonic influence and the ability to offset China's dominance. Differences may overcome all their factors leading to conflict. The U.S. must build legitimacy and support a system of rules that protects interests when we are no longer rules only superpower. Hedge the French great power war there 13. Promise causes a more peaceful world leading. Leadership reduces friction among historical antagonists. Privacy reduces proliferative incentives and keeps complicated relationships stable. Taxpayer content does release lowers likelihood for superior powers. Record power gives the ability to spread democracy. Liberal democracy more likely to align with the U.S. and conflict is significantly reduced. Democracy is more transparent, more likely to resolve things amicably along with democratic states within the growth of the economy. U.S. liberty to create liberal worldwide network characterized by commerce, mobility of capital, and labor markets. The U.S. has been willing to use its power to promote welfare. 50 options humanitarian nature. There's other state organizations that can provide these global benefits with the U.S. power. Liberal order will lend and congressionally create a drone for key reverse negative international perceptions. Epstein 11 in order to comport with law and mitigate criticism, killing Congress connects attention for judicial review. This would comport with IHL provide ensure transparency for the international community, killing on arbitrary and help ensure the fact that the U.S. forces are held accountable to target killings to the court to provide meaningful review to ensure that agents are not acting carte blanche. The plan is sufficient to salvage U.S. reputation. Epstein 11, the court would provide for a system of review this mechanism of international accountability. Prior knowledge could have been screened as to review help salvage reputation of running at home, and formal judicial oversight is key. Maintain resolve while signaling restraint. NYT 10, The government needs to do a better job showing the world is acting in strict compliance with law. The government needs to employ due process. The government can establish a court. The government could get a warrant in a timely and efficient way for more oversight, a better way of demonstrating confidence in methods that offensive laws nation results such apart from us and other countries. The U.S. couples action with careful judgment and external court-based oversight maintains legitimacy, key internally to global stability. Knowles 9. Stable interpretation of law bolsters stability because of the nation's can rely on those interpretations of war conflict. The executive requires maximum flexibility. There are no such constraints. The danger is the rule book was in a pattern-leading instability when the U.S. president wants loose legitimacy and insists for government depends on Afghanistan. The courts have a greater role to play. Courts are a key form of soft power. Courts give a social legitimacy and political branches tags having based the law in the universe regarded as more legitimate than looking at representation strict legitimacy in the U.S. by establishing a benchmark. Courts can reinforce and legitimize America's leadership role, and an executive lead role spurs mistrust in global opposition. Goldsmith 13. Pew reported consider opposition native of all countries to Obama's drone program. Many want to increase transparency of the process legal standard by a drone court. Internal deliberations, self-serving and non-credible tendencies are exacerbated by resistance to transparency and seeking congressional support. The administration is reliant on lawyers, interpretive extensions. These secret interpretations have been less contributing to perhaps that mistrust. President cannot establish trust through internal moves and more words rather he must take advantage of SOP detention to legitimate the adversarial branch to district the president's policies. Advantage to his norms. U.S. policies is a dangerous global precedent, expanding use threatens escalation. Taylor 1110. Agencies are monitoring proliferation around the globe. China's specified pen Turkey to eyeball Kurdish security rank given Syria fairly of matter time before the country use the technology structured by the Washington President that could be the examination possessed drugs. Washington President's success to inspire a new kind of arms race. Other nations seeing the ways the U.S. leverage attack are keen to acquire countries by using cross-border ops in a way that is so regional tension. The occurs happening in Asia, where Japan directly to Chinese drones flying there. The Zimbabwe Islands, reputation countries like the U.S. and drone tech these effectively the same type of accelerate crisis in the Eastern South China Seas. Adversary point of view behaviors to carry out cross-border targeting and throw the parts back the U.S. That's not the norm we went out there. The impact is deterrence, breakdown, and nuclear conflict. Boyle 13. Russia and China are beginning to develop and deploy drones. Traditional concepts of underweight instability will be reshaped stability. Zero by deterrence. Deterrence operate within informed worlds where confrontation between nuclear powers are rare because this is going to be costly, safe, and easy to overflights for test results to see what kind of motivator response one can imagine any attacks and deploying drones. The test result without the consequences of such a program is to predict an attack. The temptation to spy a nuclear program might prove too strong. Despite a role the deterrent relationships, magnifying the risk of a spiral conflict. The U.S. Air Force identified 70 accidents and actually will spiral out of control leads to armed confrontation. Norms and voice for a role given as precedent the top states from probably the American League using drone strikes to eliminate threats, dissidents, advisory journalists. China might reserve strikes and leaders to keep Russian emergency Russia strikes efforts to Chechnya, Israel, to police gas, and this would result in these situations where conflicts are containment are result citizens grow to make secessionist claims. A British will be to develop is not realistic to do some use come together to send the country to more to rate what remains to ensure their use to transfer to levels of norms, to proliferate and escalating Asian conflict. Rebellion 917 in misattention, Beijing sending UAV towards the island. China's drone tech relations between Tokyo, Beijing, Japan might place government personnel on the island from and people that internet approach moving instability and escalation to Southeast China seems to go into government wants major power work, middle conflict can result in many systems to the UAVs to encourage greater risk and recipe for mishelp. China would powerful dismissive before they were targeting stable balance of power exacerbated reemergence of border actors the capabilities competitors are accelerating tension and stability. This will get more critical to lack of the use of conflict. Japan is shooting down drones to Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, funding use of UAVs. It has been a world back since the Asian parties are part of their military's little experience and remain to the norms. These are being filled right now in most dangerous area of the world. We're going to embrace the absent political leadership, tactical leading to war, and conflict escalation uniquely likely now. Bellinger 11-8. In the escalating dispute, the drones were going boiling point Japan was shaped by the Chinese drone use of animated vehicles, altered rules, began to add uncertainty, especially no powder cut. The nuclear is similar to the conflict between China and the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, others of the SCSU, gets a flashpoint island dispute by force China to be used in war. None of this gives them the role of drone played the two major development in China's investment in drones, Japan to progress military posture, the rise of regional, signaling a shift in Japan's strategic posture. The ECS is rapidly changing the region, is seeking escalation and preparedness for reaction to the Sakaka drones to result in aircraft and channels for border actions. Sakaka will dispute the point of the Canadian world, drone play escalating to political tension. Point of war goes nuclear quickly. Goldstein 13. The reputation of China relations crisis escalate to open military conflict and conflicts of private race and conflict consider implications of shorting time, especially in the East and South China Seas, suggests that the danger in San may be on the rise in an assessment considering the attention of conventional nuclear forces and capable escalation remains possibility capability to raise through disaster concerns escalation pressures will be the house early in a crisis compressing the time for diplomacy. The plan solve judicial review foster sustainable norms. Luxler 13 expansion deference executives allotted and especially increased number of rate of trucks these drone become regular tool and will for other governments as well predicts like conspiracy accountability lack judicial oversight violates accountability norms rotor compliance relations with allies even if the current versus lawful many where the government made out drone strength without sufficient protections. The judiciary plays an important role most mostly Congress and legislation facilitated drone court. Drone court's key, Child 13. The drone court not necessarily slow down the government's ability to wait for the government's process. Man-hours are pressed and together intel what can inspire the determinants for a judge to determine if the government aircraft be killed. The government said the president will oversight is not a question of whether the government can establish and oversight to increasing credibility whether they have wills technical place laws that clearly define this new norm. The plan the United States federal government should establish ex ante judicial review process for targeted killing by drone solved and seeking congressional action is key to create a fourth jurisdiction and establish oversight. It's effective and healthy 11. Congress can pass legislation oversight, establish oversight of targeted killing by a visa that establishes a court jurisdiction fees for price working out of these effective balances can be claims to legislative solution, can provide additional enforcement while representing countries and duties. Congress will lead fears for abuse of targeted killings. A legislative solution will provide the public with clarity related law fees as a model that's applicable in substance and structure. Piece of work with the years fees for himself capable of handling large volume of request visa, present independent oversized institution capable of entering real-time decisions. Visa court projects and review critical component. Pre-scheming is a critical component of oversight and Credible external oversight is key, leads to international modeling, allows the U.S. to effectively crack down on rogue programs and suspicious. 12. The administration is establishing precedents that other nations may follow. There's no reason to believe the U.S. steers out its own TKs possibly without a credible oversight. B. England for top U.S. behavioral full of vacuum and anything goes standard might be the result of dissemination of other countries' programs to bring hollow. The U.S. adopt oversight and negotiation will carry more weight, so too U.S. pressure on other states to have similar systems. Governments would turn on an invitation to apply a permanent system oversight where repealed disrupt humanitarian concerns.
I didn't read Farley, and then which is the last part in the second advantage, and HRI, which is the second
Yeah,
cool. Everyone sounds right.
Alright, let's talk about your hedge hunter. Who is Fujimoto?
Fujimoto is Lieutenant Colonel in the United States
Army. So, someone from the Army says that the military is a good thing. Why should we believe them?
Well,
seems like they might be a little biased.
I think that every author, who is embedded within the institutions they work in might have some ideological incentive.
So why should we rely
However, why should we learn ourselves from the military? Well, I think that the piece of their evidence we read after that is also, who by the way is not from a soldier, is another pretty good piece of evidence that supports that.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I also don't think that being part of a broader institution, that's like saying an academic can't write about academia because
that's fine.
They are experienced with it, they know about it.
Alright, can we talk about the norms advantage now?
Yeah.
Your evidence here says that Russia and China would use drones against places like Chechnya and the Uyghurs. What piece of evidence says that the U.S. not getting rid of drone technology, but just putting a drone court would stop them from striking these people?
Bashir Chow intellectual evidence is probably our best piece of evidence on this question. I think Bashir says that the administration is establishing precedents that other nations will follow.
Right.
I think the best one in this part is
without
credible oversight. The negative perceptions fill a vacuum.
Which of these says that this would stop Russia or China from striking these people?
It says that it would galvanize other countries to stop
using drones
extraterritorially.
To stop using drones? Like,
it's not so much that they would, stop using all pieces of drone technology, right? The argument is that the extraterritorial.
Okay, the other scenario that your evidence cites is Israel policing Gaza. Israel thinks that Gaza is part of its territory. Why would that stop that?
Well, the argument is that extrajudicial use of drones would be reined in as well.
What does that mean?
Extrajudicial means outside of judicial standards or law. So if they didn't have any basis in international humanitarian law.
Israel has like a much more robust judicial justification for drone strikes. Why would they not use their own precedent as opposed to the U.S. precedent?
I think that the U.S. being able to set global norms for drone usage would generally
so we have a drone court. Okay, I guess take a step back. What strikes does the drone court prevent?
I think all the strikes we talk about China would be less likely to strike.
No. What strikes that the U.S. is currently doing would the drone court prevent them from doing in the future?
Well, we never read specific evidence.
Right, your solitary evidence actually basically modeled off the FISA court.
Yes.
How many times has FISA denied the government the ability to order?
Not many, but the broader impact no, that's number one. It's not zero, it's like 7. But number 2, the broader impact isn't so much the individual strikes or stop.
So you don't stop any strikes?
The sentence. It is the restraint that is caused on the part of the president, whoever is submitting FISA strikes. They don't submit strikes to FISA. They know it will be turned down, so they'll only take actions that will be legal in the first place.
But FISA doesn't turn down strikes. I don't understand.
Right, it's a chicken-egg problem. They don't turn down strikes because people don't submit stupid or illegal ideas to strikes to them. They would have done those strikes absent FISA, but they don't do so because they know that they would just get turned down, so it's wasting everybody's time.
Okay. Did you know that?
Yeah, 1 second for
Use like 5 seconds.
See one off in case.
Just the hedge advantage and the
Hedge the norms on case.
Every other? Yeah, I just pull up, sorry.
The affirmative description of war as a disembodied one. This is bad because war as a visceral event is that always dependent on the body. Their faulty ontology means that their evidence is suspect, and their failure to accurately describe war caused ontological violence is sorely in 2013. Embodiment have denied the ontology of conventional war scholarship. War is not politics by any other means, but politics incarnate, politics experienced through bodies. It is through the ontology of war, the affective, sensory, and embodied ways through which war lives and breeds, the defective theory of war that is not considered war as a practice. It is focused upon the body, rendered any demarcation of discrete war zones and times problematic. Emphasizing the enactment or reproduction of war through its affective corporeal careers, embodied suffering, and somatic memories, states have been marked by remilitarization that has often been intensely embodied and emotional. The affective tsunami unleashed by 9/11 was processed in a visceral manner, shaping the judgment below the threshold of deliberative discussion that would be appropriated by the legitimate Varath in 2003. It is through such mundane practice that the legitimacy of having vast military force assumes an implicitness, becomes something not thought but felt in every day. Such examples point to the need to think about war in terms of militarization of affect and body. Additionally, the performance of the 1AC assumes an able-bodied standpoint. It is impossible to separate our discussions from encounters from the relationships to disability that's voiced in 2008. Any encounter mediated by who is there, who is not, why they are there, what they bring, and what they take away. Such events involve meanings in the making. They involve interpretations, talk, gestures, bodily relationships, and actions. What embodied experience do we, the participants, bring to the encounter? Disabled and non-disabled participants are not separated, and the impact of framing disabled people in ways not their making remains central to the investigation. And the impact is the epistemological and ontological destruction. The body is the source of the shaping and force of all knowledge and meaning. That's Creel in 1990. The mind and the body are not separate. The body is experienced by the one who lives in it, and is the location in which is the place in the world that makes possible relationships. The body is sense bestowing and form giving. It is mind being to the world, and the instrument by which all information and knowledge is received and meaning is generated. The body is a way of organizing through the realms of the senses, the variations of existence that are embodied into being through a layer of the larger matrix. And the alternative is to recognize the invisible disability. It is time to stop pretending that if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. Disability consciousness is the first step towards changing the question from should there be access to how should there be access. And as an educator, you should adopt an ethic of care. Once we recognize the ablest structures of debate in society writ large, it is our responsibility to do something about it. An ethic of care provides a framework for inclusion and accessibility. And here's our vision for debate. We think the form that the 1AC chose to use was exclusionary. We think the 1AC has perpetuated certain structures in debate that are problematic. First is speed. The unrealistic rate of delivery has cut off access to this activity for many people with disabilities. People living with dyslexia, speech impediments, having to use interpreters are put at a structural disadvantage or simply altogether excluded from these debates. Next is physical inaccessibility. The very buildings and classroom that debates take place that are inaccessible. Other buildings lack basic things like functioning elevators or ramps and foyers, and newer buildings have structural problems within classrooms that make it difficult for some people to engage because of the environment that they're forced into. Next is technical focus. The dependence on specialized and technical jargon, as well as the reliance on the idea of tech over truth, has reduced debate to a chess game where the pedagogical potential has been replaced with a win-loss column. We think debate should center on the large ideas instead of hyper-specific drops like big alt's bad, a conditionality, or try or die logic. Modeling debate as an actual policy debates that occur would greatly increase accessibility. If a potential lawmaker or constituent can't understand the 1AC, then it should not be seen as a persuasive speech that supports a specific policy or action. And finally, this is not a comprehensive list of the problems in debate. We think there are other issues that prevent access, like a broken case list or certain tournament practices that can and should be changed. And we think that the practices that we have outlined are good places to start to be able to solve this. We understand that debate will not change overnight, but we think that there are forms and methods that have occurred in this round that should be changed right here and now on a case. The 1AC rests on a distinction of American losses that are prevented at all costs while the rest of the world can be exterminated with no recourse. That's Butler in 2004. Certain forms of grief become nationally recognized and amplified, whereas other losses become unthinkable and ungrievable. A national melancholia, understood as a disavowed mourning, follows upon the erasure from public representations of the names, images, and narratives of those the United States has killed. On the other hand, the U.S.'s own losses are consecrated in public obituaries. The differential allocation of grievability operates to produce and maintain certain exclusionary conceptions of who is normatively human, what counts as livable life. And the impact is unending warfare, fueled by the naked worship of violence that is American politics. Everything other counts as subhuman and liable to destruction. That's Roy in 2008. The naked worship of violence is basic to organization of state power to carry on the endless war that began when the United States took the role of the global policeman. There is a challenge to domination. The United States will have the right to destroy that challenge. Its immediate implication of erasure in Iraq, the intentionality or the confluence of discourse of freedom, progress, rationality, and terror keeps the world gripped in a dialectic of violence. To rule an empire, America had to maintain a vast military machine, such as the CIA, which operate under a blanket of secrecy. When democracies are run by means of secret organizations, they become despotisms. The message is that if the killing machine is the state of the art, then society is safe. The state legitimizes itself combating violence and terror while maintaining a silence on real issues of livability. The more people must be banned from the public sphere. The security state becomes shrouded in secrecy. All relevant information on the basis of which informed decisions can be made is kept from the public as a state secret. This is the state of diarchy. The parallel processes are set up, one for the rulers and another for the government, yielding the necessary room for limitless violence. And next, that Obama will only lie. Secrecy prevents any form of actual checks on the government. That's Craftman in 2013. In near total secrecy, the U.S. executive was in a world of its own. The U.S. mass media convey executive branch perspective. The United States executive is essentially free to conduct its activities as it wishes. The executive routinely violates even timid legislative attempts to control the unilateral war-making. It's deceiving its own people, keeping the activities secret, and living and covering them up when caught. And the affirmative discourse of hegemonic integration rehashes the geographies of exclusion and barbarism in a nicer term. The discourse of global instability versus a stable U.S. confirmed the hierarchy of dominant U.S. identity. That's Campbell in 2007. The concept of integration invoked by Kagan and Barnett is similarly at the heart of the foreign policies. The goal of U.S. foreign policy should be to persuade major powers to sign on to certain key ideas as to how the world should operate. The U.S. is no longer prepared to tolerate regimes that do not mirror its own values, and integration goes hand in hand with its mutually constitutive new forms of vision. Recent articulations of U.S. strategy, sense and boundedness, fixity, and naturalize a specific view of the world. Although the U.S. may construct itself as the undisputed leader of the new global scenario, to its right relies on the application of support. The construction of the United States, a world rule relies on the selective placement and representation of other international actors who are held in a specific subject position. Such rhetoric and provide the conditions of possibility for current and future action. The ideal of integration necessarily invokes the idea of exclusion. The imagined divide between the U.S. homeland and threatening frontier lands recalls earlier notions of barbarism. We've gone to norms. Ignoring the stories of drone victims and focusing only on the view from Capitol Hill leads to even worse policies. Oversight of targeted killings causes a shift to signature strikes. That's Olin in 2013. One of the proposals for curing the due process deficit in targeted killings is for Congress to create a federal court. It is unlikely that such a court could authorize specific strikes. Such a court would approve the administration's decision to place a name on the list. It would push the administration to avoid targeted killings, and it would increase the collateral damage. Why would the administration have any incentive to keep adding names to the list? Why not stop using it? It could then rely exclusively on signature strikes. Such strikes would then not be banned because the United States would not know who it is bombing. This would be the case of willful blindness, but the court would push the military back towards the old system. Target groups or individuals would push the military back towards the old system. Target groups and individuals, and the system remained in all previous conflicts. There would be a disincentive to acquire even more information. An argument is not that no oversight is good, but that even with your own political gain, you have the situation wrong. The reason for this is the refusal to look at the totality of experiences of violent exclusion. They decide whose opinions on drones count and whose don't, and in doing so create a false political world for themselves to plan. And the affirmative conception of liberal progress gets co-opted by the state and used to justify an extension of domination over subhuman life. This dooms the affirmative to failure. That's Butler in 2009. To insist on a unified cultural framework as a precondition of politics would be to preclude such a framework from political contestation. This means that resisting developmental narratives that determine what a just view of human flourishing consists in. The concept of historical progress of mankind cannot be sundered from the concept of its progression. The constellation, which is its own era, cannot be reduced to cultural pluralism or a liberal discourse of rights. To separate the now time from these claims of modernity is to undercut the temporal framework that uncritically supports the state power. Without a critique of state violence and the power it wields to construct the subject of cultural difference, our claims to freedom risk an appropriation by the state. Only though a critique through state violence do we stand a chance to find existing alliances and decide the context to consider how coercion seeks to divide. If freedom is the ideal, it will be important to remember how the rhetoric of freedom can be deployed in the name of self-legitimization of a state whose coercive force gives the lie to its claim of safeguards humanity. The excuse of modernity recreates the frames that make some life valuable while others are worthless. That's Butler in 2009. Liberal freedoms are now being understood to rely upon a hegemonic culture called modernity that relies upon increasing freedoms. This uncritical domain becomes the site for cultural and religious hatred. At stake is a convergence if, in place of the liberal freedom, we focus on the critique of state violence and the elaboration of its coercive mechanisms, we may sell and arrive at the alternative political framework that implies another sense of modernity.
Your Butler evidence says that we can't. Good. All right. Your Butler evidence says that you can't impose a united cultural construct of what an institution should be. Why don't you link to that when you say like what debate should be? It should be not fast. It should be not technical, etc.
Because debate, we're critiquing the existence of debate as already a united cultural construct. That these are the norms. We say one, these norms need to be critiqued and rejected.
Right.
So
that creates a new cultural construct, right?
Yes, Butler says that, Butler doesn't say that we need to reject all cultural constructs. She says we need to continue to critique them so that we make sure that individuals are not continually excluded.
You didn't want these norms to happen. Why didn't you ask us not to go quickly before the debate, given that this is a norm you know about?
So,
if you wanted us not to go quickly or technical, why wouldn't you ask people to do this before debate, given that this
We
is a
don't
norm
think it's
you
the
know about?
responsibility of the people who are affected by these norms to demand that this type of marginalization stops. We think that these are structures in debate that should be, that shouldn't exist. Like, just asking before the round doesn't change the structure.
What is speed? How fast is too fast? I mean, you probably went twice as fast as a politician would during their average speech. You have audible breath in your speeches as well. How fast is too fast?
The argument that we made is that, I forget where it is on the club, but we make the argument that if people like constituents or individuals who are not debaters cannot understand it, then that uniquely...
You realize if you gave this speech on TV or in political office or anything like that, the number one criticism of everything you did would have been too fast, I couldn't comprehend everything. Even in the speech you gave.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think people would have been like, I could
So
understand
you
that.
think when people go, have the audible breath thing after every sentence?
That's
every
only
speech.
that's only emblematic of how much of a symptom the norms of debate become. Because I've been debating so long, it becomes so ingrained within myself. That's why we're trying to do this, to move away from the norms of debate that cause this to happen.
Why is speed bad?
Because it means that, one, it prevents people who can't go as fast from participating in
Either of
the
you
form
have
of
a
debate.
mental, just full disclosure and interest. Do either of you have a mental or physical impairment that prevents you from?
I think that first, asking that, like, we shouldn't have to justify
I'm
a
not-
disability,
yeah,
but
I
second, I
understand.
won't disclose. I do have both mental health issues and a physical disability that has prevented me from accessing debate in certain instances in the past.
The case stuff, your Butler evidence says that we only grieve American lives. Almost all of the death discussed in the 1 state is probably happening overseas, and we say that those deaths are something that can't be prevented by American action. Why do we make only American lives?
Because the only time this conversation takes place is when it begins to threaten American lives. That we've forgotten about the violence that we've done through drones.
What is the warrant for that? Why is the fact that we have said, hey, all these people are dying, both overseas due to drone strikes, we should rein those in through?
Because the only reason we talk about that is because it will threaten American lives. We forget about the thousands that we've killed over the years.
statement?
I think that process of the Wednesday was pretty indicative that the court wouldn't end any strikes. Even if it did, then the executive would just switch to signature strikes.
So
You only care
you
about
have
these
to win a
strikes when they
solvency
affect
argument
U.S.
to win the
lives.
link to the scrutability arguments.
Sorry?
You have to win that solvency argument to win a link.
No, because you only care about these lives once it would possibly cause a future war that could affect American lives.
No time cards.
Order is hedge, norms, critique. Actually, sorry, the critique is on top, my bad.
Critique at the top.
Yeah, sorry.
Same case, though.
Everybody good?
Framework, the case got proof that the 1AC is bad. When death is fatal to fair educational engagement, isolated negation doesn't invalidate or play valid. Simulated enactment, this has pedagogical value. The impact is case down to 13 law overlaps with power. Being out with the expression of authority and effort to limit the same data, greater insight can be gained by looking at specific demands. Does not mean that goals are exclusive law, but it does suggest greater nuance with regard to pedagogical skills. I have suggested 6 goals: understanding the law, dealing with uncertainty, obtaining critical distance, developing skills, exhibiting judgment, and creating self-learning. They must integrate these skills in one experience, ensuring they will be most effective in simulation, providing an important way forward to say that stipulation students are given an agency responsibility for their exclusion. Data does provide a certain point moving forward in engagement with bureaucracy in the state's critical to alter laws on the books and the way solve their alternative aiming show itself. And I'm suggesting that we look at bureaucracy through its colored glass decades for the reform efforts, rather than reducing its probability of corruption or minimizing the amount of inefficiency at the very right when folks who are driving these agencies then turn around and decide to perform their performance by these organizations. Evidence of the ineptness of government, the negative stereotypes of bureaucracy contribute to the political atmosphere, legitimize the right-wing attacks on the government, and services are able to exploit these misperceptions just by get that attempt to defund the public safety in order to benefit American belief. The bureaucracy is more likely they are to agree with effort to programs the criticisms of bureaucracy that are based much more on myth than reality. These agencies play a central role in promoting the question of democratic government or generally consciousness is the standard we should use for agency death. That way back to the Patterson 3 death is evil because the natural agency destroys the subject independently calculating about better or worse life. Death isn't evil because it brings about change the destruct the end that we are rejecting life cannot be or to sense an expression of ultimate we should not seek to destroy the very circle of human possibility. They say they ask life problems with debate, not necessarily problems with the affirmative. There is no bright line. Their speed argument, which is the only link that they have. I'll do more specific analysis on the speed argument because it's the only offense that they have against the speech act of the speech act of the 1AC, which is the only thing that you evaluate problems about debate or not problems with the 1AC. Just because this building isn't accessible is not a reason to vote us down, and voting us down doesn't change anything about the laws on the book. That is the impact to our framework argument. The reason that the framework arguments, the death arguments turn the case because we don't engage with bureaucracy and instead just have a conversation about ableism doesn't teach us the skills that we need to actually interact with the bureaucracy, and the alternative fields doesn't have a political solution. Famous in Watson 13, CDS not engaged with ethical issue to the role of impairment of disability in people's well-being. Well, see, yes, we probably guide you the hard to confront ableist some consideration that less morally significant. Impairment sometimes for these practical, difficult, ethical choices we need more concrete view that the viewpoint and the ideas provide through ableist welfare analysis of such ableist discourse against ethical judgment should provide no argument or conclusion to whether a certain bodily trained by the ethically wrong whether impairment may not consider that it constitutes the moral harm while CDX produce useful analyses of the cultural right protection of disabilities need to engage more closely with the evaluative issues inherently related to disability. While one could hardly disagree that we should seek to uncover the hidden and unconsidered ideals on which practice the practice of base critique is indeed exactly about identifying what things are not right as they are and why settling almost exclusively to analysis of ableism without engaging properly with the ethical issues involved. CDS analyses are deficient. They say speed, but if they didn't understand us, they should have asked us to slow down. They have not made an argument about why we need to slow down so that they can understand us. Our argument is that getting more information out there increases our the education, our ability to interact with the bureaucracy. They are obviously flowing my speech, and they can get what I am saying, which increases the critical thinking around, teach us to change the ableist policies and stuff. Additionally, there's no bright line. Obviously, a constituent wouldn't understand the concept of the concept of recognizing invisible disability, which is the reason that they think they're also incomprehensible to the vast majority of citizens. They don't have the technical expertise needed to participate in the debate. They have conceded that the tradition of debate gives us those skills, and that means that we can access it in a unique way. Additionally, there's no reason to vote us down. There's no reason to vote us down. They link to this argument. Additionally, permutation, take their speaker points. If you think we're speaking too quickly, speaker points are an objective way to spend a massive role. Ballot is not determined who speaks better. The judge and a policymaker should use the ballot to determine whose advocacy is better irrespective of speaking skills. And permutation, do the plan to recognize invisible disability, or permutation recognize invisible disability and vote affirmative. This is arbitrary. Negative can establish a bright line to that vote has to be is good versus our defense. All your offense is so to nobody speaks so fast it hurts education or communication. And if they did, they would lose speakers points probably around 2. There's no loss of fairness. Those slow debaters can have success in policy debate. Jeffrey Ding empirically proves the 3. The impact is never believed that everyone is naturally capable of different things. A debater who can write with both hands would have a huge advantage too, but that's not a reason to vote against them. Debate is exclusive like every other competitive activity, and that has rules regarding speech time, society, and trace. Some people have the advantage of being able to make more arguments in that time, then it's just part of competing in life. Next, our offense, one speed increases education, allows us to debate further, in depth about arguments, analyze multiplicity of orange cross by the analysis that we did above and too quickly. The delivered evidence becomes a proxy for stories with which we're all familiar. The rapid fire simplification promotes evidence communication to understand within political debate, even though Beals had gets speed in 15 seconds every debate, that's good because it allows for an inroad discussion with U.S. leadership and war, both of which are important. And they don't marginalize the situation of many disabled bodies, famous and Watson 13 discretion second gifts will not in and of itself produce respect and equality between all people with various characteristics that will result in social order free from a sense of difference. Some of the individual characteristics defined disabled people or disabilities not the same as that group identity. We need to explore both morally and socially disability and difference rather than simply use difference as concept through which critically critique the disability identity market identity. Next, they say architecture, but this building is accessible only even if it's not. The policy does not link to accessibility. accessibility, nothing about voting. The 1AC down provides an alternative to the law, which is because they have not answered, they're not going to answer the framework arguments probably, which impact which internally turns the critical thinking skills necessary to create that change. Additionally, law solves that's our framework argument. The 1AC, obviously, it's not a reason to vote us down. We're not unfairly taking advantage of the building in any way that they are not. Additionally, they say hyper-technical debate. There's no bright line between 1 to 2 hyper-technical. The policymaker wouldn't understand the concept of an alternative or a link. They wouldn't understand the construction of the critique, which means that which is the reason that their debate is not accessible. They additionally participate in practices like flowing, using computers which people don't have access to, which is an independent link to the negative. They does not link to the 1AC. We're focusing on the broad strokes, not going for hyper-technical debate. There's no alternative that solves the constituency, and there's no alternative that solves. They don't have a concrete political solution that would solve it. Go ahead. They say erasure of others, but extinction outweighs that about the affirmative is the only way to create the institutional engagement skills which are necessary to solve the impact, which means that death is an impact to voting for the death is an impact to our framework arguments. We have to build those decision-making skills to be able to interact with the bureaucracy. It's critical to solve it. Additionally, we preserve all life. America is the acting force of international politics, which means preserving American hegemony is necessary, critical to preventing the erasure of those others. Additionally, the old bills, they don't have workable replacement for hegemony. The foreign hegemony became 11. All sure bounty will withdraw from Japan and the Middle East until the balance worked out. And which when the United States would intervene without the prospects of war on the Korean Peninsula would increase in the 20th century. The United States would end up intervening with millions of offshore bounty strategy. To strike wars and enormous benefits strategy to provide never appear on the leader. The prevention of major war, open trade markets, and free government. The past executives have seen a great increase in global prosperity and kind of benefits outweigh the cost money assumed. The world simply become more peaceful. That conflict has become impossible. This is hidden in some of those who call for a change to try to intervention throughout history. Has been optional. The United States to refrain from intervening abroad, but in practice, well, many assume that the American public has had the historical record suggests the policy of non-intervention realist present have been just likely. Additionally, the impact is not one of the alternatives. Obviously, worse, they don't have an alternative to it, which means there is a determinable uniqueness problem with this. Is that it is not a unique feature of the it is not a unique feature of American policy. Any intervention would get worse. That was the card that I just read, which means we impact on the alternative. Additionally, there is no don't sacrifice the good at the hands of the perfect just because there is an ideal. This utopian vision of what global politics could be like doesn't mean it's practical, which means a reason to vote against them. Additionally, the president believes he's constrained by pride that the statute practice 12. The constitution of the executive people legally constrained suggests the president believes himself constrained by law. If you represent the president without a recognition of the various constraints is appreciated and that attempt to operate outside the bound of law will trigger the censure from Congress that of course the public in Obama would comply with the court of life and night. The political branch will ignore judicial decision that assumes that does not attempt through it. He has assumed the executive would ignore judicial decision while Jackson may have had reasons to fear such conflict law to change the past 6.5 decades is one where I cannot bound to never press the president possessing the piece of the political capital work use. They say hedge pay, but I already answered that with the Kagan argument. Additionally, the argument they are getting better is made in the Kagan argument, which means that hedge is empirical good for the world order. Go to the enormous advantage. They say that leads to signature strikes, but this card is literally just an argument that the court would rubber stamp it. It's not a rubber stamp. You have 12 factors suggest rigorous review, not a rubber stamp high approval rates. Next suggests that the executive the existing would filter out weak repressive constraints and enhance credibility of America. Additionally, we impact on signature strikes. Those are good things because they don't want to use effectively. They stop the breakdown of they stop the rise of international terrorist organizations like the ones leading to argumentative impact. They have not impact defense to any of these, which means we access more nuclear war scenarios. The breakdown of Yemen turns the Horn of Africa, which erupts into a nuclear conflict without the use of drone strikes. Additionally, oversight is critical to maintaining legitimacy in the status quo. Drone backlash will come now, which will curtail drone operations. We need those drone operations to stay in the status quo. Additionally, they have no card substantiating this exclusion of views argument, and I answered that on both the developer argument.
What does the affirmative do to solve for the laws on the books?
The affirmative participates in a system of debate that fosters the critical thinking, decision-making, and technical skills with things like cost-benefit analysis, given by things like debate institutions.
How much cost-benefit analysis do I need to learn to be able to interact with these laws on the books?
You know the cost-benefit analysis.
What do you mean?
You know some cost-benefit analysis, but we are all constantly in a progression of developing these skills, and the more that we develop those skills, it's sort of a linear impact.
I think a better way to think of it than just cost-benefit analysis, which clearly everybody does, and every time they try to make a decision that they think has utility to them, is technical and legal focus. And it's a constant journey to expand our ability to understand legal vocabulary, to engage with.
Why do I need to understand the legal vocabulary to understand that these laws are pretty messed up?
Because the reason that,
you don't have to, long story short, if you want to do anything about it, if you want to be an effective policy or legal activist, Yeah, absolutely.
I don't. So I need to learn like the internal statutes and stuff that allow drones to know that they're a bad
If
thing.
you want to have a policy that is palatable to the people who would listen to you or enact any meaningful reform of the drone program, 100%, absolutely.
In fact, let me just say something about your question. Your question is not, your question is based on whether or not we know drones are bad. A, we don't know that drones are bad. That's the entire 1AC. B, your argument that we just need to know that things are bad is not useful. That is our problem with the criticism, right?
Okay.
You say that certain
Why
practices
should the
are bad,
judge-
don't offer any pragmatic way to change
Okay,
things.
why should the judge view this round as a policymaker? Actually, scratch that.
Okay.
How does reading the affirmative in the 1AC and then your arguments in the 2AC, how does that stop a nuclear war from happening?
So what the 1AC tried to do was engage you in a legal and theoretical debate, and you did to some extent engage us with the rubber stamping and circumvention arguments.
Sure.
But critiques like the critique that you read don't engage us. It engage in the dialogue that we need to be able to change things like drone policy. So,
So our dialogue is going to be able to
1AC
change
has
drone
offered-
policies?
What?
Our dialogue is going to be able to change drone policies?
Yes, absolutely. The 1AC has engaged in a dialogue which gives us
What
the
are we gonna
skills
do-
to interact with the real legal solutions.
So what are we going to like go out and protest and things like that?
It has nothing to do with protest. I mean, that is one possible alternative. But say writing articles. I mean, Kyle, who is just
It seems like people who work for the newspaper are able to write articles as well. What about debate?
Right,
Is
Not
speaking
articles
heated
that are
debate?
listened to by the government. My partner, who's just here, straight up works for the CSAS and nuclear policy, and is able to shape the legal and political discourse that surrounds realities, which is absolutely essential to debate.
Like, you're right that newspaper people say a lot of stuff, but without the actual technical jargon, they are incapable of engaging in the legal battles, so they get slapped down by real
Did
policy.
everyone who worked for the CSAS debate?
No,
Okay.
No.
but Kyle got that job.
9:55.
Maybe criticism? Okay. Invisible disability. The state of having an impairment that is not visceral enough to be visible. The state of being both disabled and invisible. The debate community. See, just like me, the debate community has an invisible disability. Our discussion centered on federal government action, or social location, or French theorists, but we forget the debate is still, at its center, an exclusionary activity. My senior year of high school, we studied spoken word poetry in my English class. Some kids read poems that had written about love, or school, or friends. I wrote a poem about my suicide attempt. It was titled Football Player. People only see me as a football player, as a white guy. My identity becomes irrelevant because it is invisible, and that extends to debate. We only see the surface of what debate is. We see the arguments that each team makes. We see the shenanigans that happen at tournaments, but we never see dark undersides of exclusion. The debate community is really good at calling itself a community without acting like one. We pretend to be progressive and play lip service to equality, but there is never an attempt to truly promote equality when it comes to disability. Yesterday, at the students-only meeting at the forums, there was a discussion about inclusion and safety, but there was never a discussion about accessibility or disability in the hours that we were there talking about how to make debate safe. At the Vanderbilt tournament, I had to debate over a live stream because of my impairment. The tournament was extremely supportive, but only because it didn't change the structure of debate. When I couldn't debate the second day because of my impairment, Joy was forced to forfeit every single round. As soon as disability clashes with accepted rules, it becomes marginalized, and those struggling for true equality are eradicated from the activity. And it's not just the win-loss column. The structure of debate, things like technical jargon, unreal rates of delivery, and inaccessible classrooms, a broken case list, these are all inherently exclusionary. This is the invisible disability of debate. Debate is broken, but not everyone sees it, so everyone ignores it. Now, they make a couple framework arguments about engaging with the state, but I don't think that they have engaged with the 1 and C in a way that justifies these arguments. Our arguments about the way that their representations of war, their representations of debate, and their form that they produce in the 1AC are exclusionary and not good forms. This isn't a question of whether or not we should talk about state policy or engage in the state. It's really cool that Cal got a job at CSAS, but that does not mean that he has been able to functionally change the way that nuclear policy works. Additionally, this is not engage in the ways that debate communities work. Now, this is not engaged in the way that the debate community works. We cannot learn by engaging in the state what we can do to change the way that the structure of debate functions. Additionally, all of their evidence they read about the state is evidence from law school. This means that debate is not a necessary place to get this type of education. Cross-sex Shirley asks is everyone at CSAS a debater? The answer is no. There are other places we get education. What we can use debate for is enormous pedagogical potential that can only reach its potential when we make it accessible to every person that wants to be part of debate. If even one person is not allowed or is excluded from debate, then we have failed as a community that values pluralism and progressivism. Now, I'll also do the link right here that proves that the state is not a good thing. First is the disembodied war argument. The source evidence in the 1C indicates that the affirmative describes drones as a weapon in the arsenal of the U.S. instead of an assassination method that murders individuals. Their detached description of potential war, things like hotspots in Asia, Yemen instability, ignore that these drone strikes are already creating instability in the families of thousands of individuals and constitute a war against everything other. They have not answered this part of the 1C, which is an independent reason why their rhetoric in the 1C, even if they win that their form is good, is not a good form of discussing war. Now, the second link argument is rights for who and rights for what. Their attempt to incorporate rights for everyone in drone strikes is a method to shore up human rights regime. Papers over mass violation of rights occurring elsewhere. Places like Guantanamo, Abu Dhabi, and the debate community. The justification for not killing people shouldn't be a potential war in the future, but rather understanding that these rights are rights that people have to not die. Now, the next argument is the model citizens argument. Now, they posit a model citizen in the 1C, a debater that is fast, a debater that is efficient, a debater that makes technical arguments. This ignores the way that in debate there are people who are seen as citizens and non-citizens. Some people are not allowed to debate because of argument choices because they can't fit a bodily model for what makes a good debater. Their argument about what citizenship and incorporation is the representation of the able-bodied in debate. This is Breckenridge and Bulger in one. An assumed able body is crucial to the smooth operation of traditional theories of democracy, citizenship, subjectivity, beauty, and capital. Liberal theory conflates political or economic interests with desires, political representation with a voice in policymaking. Liberal theory naturalizes the political by making it personal. He is an able-bodied locus of subjectivity, one whose unskilled labor may be substituted freely for the labor of other such individuals. The mere possibility of a severely cognitive disabled citizen disrupts the liberal equations of representation of balance, desire, and interest. Now, the final linked argument is the hegemonic bodies argument. The form the 1AC represents is a standpoint of an able body. We've outlined a couple of exclusionary practices that they do, and each one is the reason why they continue to endure structures of debate that are fundamentally exclusionary. Now, I don't think their usual argument answers the criticism because they do not have their hands on the lever of power. There's nothing about the reading of the 1AC in this round that changes any structures that prevent some form of depth, whereas the 1AC has the potential to change structures of debate that incorporates and allows people to engage in debate, which is which I think we can all agree is a wonderful, pedagogically useful activity that right now people are fundamentally not able to participate in because of certain structures in debate. Now, They say that there's no bread line for what speed is, but we have presented a bread line in the 1AC. A constituent or a lawmaker could not understand the speech cannot understand the 1AC or the 2AC. The notion that should not be viewed as persuasive speeches to support the policy that they have presented. Now, there's also a couple other arguments as to why their extreme form of speed is bad. Things like people with dyslexia, people that need interpreters would never be able to participate in debate because of the rates of speed that occur currently in the structures. The speed that is exemplified by the 1AC and the 1AC, the 1AC and the 2AC. Now, they say that there's no political solution but we think that the alternative that we have read is a political solution. We think that when we recognize invisible disability, recognize that there is a problem, that we need to do something about this problem, that there are certain structures in debate that are exclusionary, and we have identified those structures. We can do things about those structures that make debate inclusionary, that make debate accessible for everyone. Now, this is a real political method in order to produce change. They've also conceded that your role as a judge and an educator is to adopt a politics of care. That means that when you adopt a politics of care, the framework for making these changes become obvious. When we care about every person's access to the activity, then that means that we are allowed to change the ways that the activity functions in order to truly create this change. Now, they say that we should have asked them to slow down, but that is accommodation, not accessibility. 1AC should have been accessible from the very start. This is Kroger intent. We, without thinking, frame disability as abnormal, an individual problem. Our response would be reactive rather than proactive. We accommodate. Accommodations maintain the notion that access is a disabled individual's problem to solve. On campuses, disabled students spend an inordinate amount of time establishing eligibility and requesting accommodations. The rationale is self-advocacy. It's important for students to learn to solve problems and make decisions, but why should disabled students be required to take responsibility for access issues that are institutional problems? Now they they read a perm about speaker points, but first I think it's pretty obvious that speaker points are already very objective and are already very objective through things that happen at Harvard. But second, I think that this doesn't solve the affirmative. It's not a question of whether or not we get speaker awards. It's a question of whether or not people can actually function in activity. We think that the alternative is a good way to voting for the alternative is a good way. Now, their perm argument doesn't make sense because you cannot perm self-narration, you cannot perm the form. The 1AC presents a certain form and certain representations that they have defended throughout the round. That means that they have to keep defending the representation. It makes no sense to do the affirmative, say yes, things in debate are fucked up, but we're not going to do anything about it. We're going to continue to use the form that we have always used exclusionary. Now, we think that the role of the ballot is to vote for the team that best makes debate accessible. You should use the ballot to demand a change in debate space. Recognizing invisible disability is the first step towards creating change. It's first step to creating change. The ballot should be a holistic perspective of debate. Now, they have conceded this argument, which means that if you think that we are winning, that the negative team makes debate more accessible, then you should vote for the negative team. Additionally, you should not call for evidence after the round. If they're not made the evidence clear to you within the speeches, then that means that then that means that if they've not made the evidence clear to you, then it's not evidence that supports their argument. If you have to read it after round to understand what their evidence is saying, then that means that they have not articulated it in a manner that is both persuasive and useful pedagogically because it does not transfer.
Do you have like a written out copy of your speech somewhere? Just like the full text typed out?
Yeah, do you want it?
You do?
Yeah.
The full text of the entire thing?
Not all of it's written down, but all of it.
Oh, not all of it's, so you don't have a full text copy of the entire speech? Some of it's off your phone?
No, some of it's arguments I made off.
Right, yeah. Do you have like a Braille copy or something?
No.
No, okay. So what about the 1NC and the 2NC do you think was accessible to people who are, say, blind or deaf?
So if you are blind, then you can. So first, if you're blind,
What about somebody who's
if you're blind, you can
What
still
about
hear the
somebody?
speech because we have presented it in a manner.
What about
that-
somebody who's blind and deaf? Do
Right.
they understand your speech? You don't have a
We
Braille
presented
copy.
it at speed that interpreters could interpret.
Oh, so using interpreters. So does the debate community provide interpreters?
No, we think that's a
So
problem.
it's probably not accessible, right?
What do you mean?
It's only accessible if the person goes out and finds it. They have to accommodate themselves to you, correct?
We think
They have to
that's a
find an
large
interpreter,
part of
bring it
debate.
in, bring them in, and accommodate themselves to you. No?
I'm sure that if someone needs an interpreter, like we would be able to provide one for them.
Oh, you personally would provide.
Yes, we would.
We would do our best.
Okay.
Either we wouldn't provide, if we couldn't provide an interpreter
Yep,
for them, then
that's
we
fine.
probably wouldn't have.
So I guess I'll just move on to this detached from core argument. Is this a link or a case turn? I just don't really understand the interaction with like the
Right.
criticism and this disabled.
So I think it functions both as a link and a case turn.
I just explain the link, I guess.
Right, the Missouri evidence says that when you view war as disembodied, then that's problematic because war is always embodied. It's always about
Right, but I don't understand why that like contributes to the exclusion of.
Right, because in debate we view debate as disembodied. We don't view it.
Okay,
as
so your
embodied.
actual link is that we view debate as disembodied and ignore structural like factors.
We think that also your descriptions of war are indicative that that is like the current structure. That
Okay, what do you mean by disembodied? What part of war is disembodied? You're talking about like
No, your
PlayStation
descriptions of
mentality,
war is
sanitation, like like drones being not personal.
No, it's not
What are you
about
talking
the
about?
weapon of drones. It's the description of war in the way I see it.
So what is a better
like,
description?
We think that kind of like what we do on the Athens Probably description, where we talk about the actual individuals that are involved in this war, people that
Okay.
get killed by
So-
drone strikes in the.
So talking about like individuals suffering, not necessarily individuals' death, talking about individuals' death doesn't count? Or are we just not allowed to talk about like vast majorities of populations dying?
The Missouri evidence is very indicative that the descriptions of war as when you lump in like armies as one thing, when you lump in war as an event that happens, and as
So
a
to
larger event, then
talk about the massive slaughter of millions and millions of people,
We don't think-
we have to talk
first-
about the individual suffering
first, I
of
don't think
those
that's what
people.
the 1AC did, but second, I think that yes, you have to talk about the individuals that are involved in war. That's in the Missouri. That's
Okay.
what Missouri says.
Alright, that's fine.
A minute 15 used. So we're at a minute 20 used, so we're at 8:40 now? Or no, sorry, where were we at when you used?
We're at 6:30.
There's memory cards for the case, so, I'm gonna be starting on the K. And then, case, where am I here? Norms and then, hedge and then norms. Yep. Just have it. Yeah, there's no new cards in the top of the case, so, got it. Are we good? Sorry. I used to have a family friend named Bentley. When he was a child, he fell off a tractor and landed on his spine, paralyzing him from the waist down. Now this forced him to live the rest of his life in a wheelchair, and to help with circulation after sitting for so long in his chair, he used to shake back and forth to prevent the blood flow problems. Now this makes perfect sense, but being able-bodied myself, I let it become absolutely dominating. Eating lunch, shaking. Watching a movie, shaking. Holding a conversation, shaking. His impairment became all that I saw, as my able-bodied lens determined that everything beyond his shaking was invisible. Now my experiences with Bentley are not isolated. Here in debate, ability has become an unrecognized norm that shapes the structures of the entirety of this activity.
We assume that all debaters begin on a level playing field, but leave countless individuals lost in the fold. While I may not recognize these in the same way, I refuse to be complicit in the structures of exclusion that prevent people with impairments from debating right now. You can go on to the alternative debate. First at the top is the alternative is three-tiered. First, we need to recognize the invisible disability happening in the status quo. The first step to recovery is admitting that we have a problem in the first place. The changes of the question should be the change of the question from should there be access to how should there be access. And next is we need to adopt an ethic of care. This provides a framework for producing change because it allows us to uniquely accommodate these structures that allow for individuals with unique disabilities to participate in the same forms of the activity that we do. And third is to vote for this division of debate. Having a clear vision of what we can change allows us to pragmatically work towards their solution. The specific steps we outline are not going to fix all the problems in debate, but we need to have a good starting point before anything can actually happen. You can go on to the speed arguments. What?
No, just answer the argument that we marginalize differences within disability.
They say we marginalize differences within disability. First is that you can crossify that we need to recognize them in the first place. The affirmative is necessary to take a first step to realizing that there is a difference in disability happening right now. But next is that the affirmative does not, the affirmative is actually the opposite direction, that we are necessary to realize that there is a unique difference. Things like my example of how all I saw with Bentley was his disability, that we need to look beyond that to see that there are individuals behind that with unique forms of disability to realize that there are different kinds of people in the debate space that we uniquely need to allow in here. Speed stuff. Oh, there it is. First, they say that we use speed as well. First argument is no, we didn't. A lay person who is not a debater would be able to understand these forms of speech as well as policymakers. But next, they say that speed is necessary to increase education. But this is not the only way that we can get education. The argument's been made about cross-ex proves this, but also that speed does not necessarily increase education in the debate space because it only leads to things like shitty politics debates where we get lost in the internals of uniqueness cards and never actually talk about what's happening in the world, but also where things like hyper-technical drops come to determine what is actually the view of the world, what is actually the view and not about the actual truth of the world. And that is why you should focus the truth in this round unnecessarily over the hyper-technicality. And next they make some arguments about inroad discussion, but you can cross-by the arguments I made above about how that necessarily rejects these because we get lost in the internals of the arguments as well. Next is the bright line argument. We don't need a bright line between how technical is enough. We need a bright line between how accessible is enough. If people are able to understand these speeches and participate in this form of debate, then that means that the affirmative is still a step in the right direction, that we are able to create a uniquely better form of debate than the status quo because more people are able to engage in it. You can go on to the case flow. First is hedge. You should focus on uniquely what happens in this round. First is because our ideas do not spread. Debate is an insulated community, and nothing we say in this round ever reaches the government or changes federal policy. That's already been made. But also that we come in with implicit advantages. That even if they win, that role-playing can be good. It's not accessible to everyone right now. That means that we need to change the way that we role-play so that everyone can access these good advantages in the first place. And that's a prerequisite towards any good forms of education. Next, that this round exports an epistemology to the community because you are not just a judge in this debate, but an educator as well. And the arguments that we make in this round uniquely export a lens to the world that determines what type of norms exist. And there's a couple links to the affirmative, which I'll do right here. First is their Adelsberg piece of evidence, which the top of the 1AC says in the ununderlined portion that the constitutional right to due process is alive and well, regardless of geographical location, but ignores that social location is necessary prerequisite towards any form of due process right now, because individuals with disabilities are denied the right to, are denied the same rights as able-bodied Americans, but also the rights to exist in this debate space that we have as well. Next is the Thayer evidence, which says that doing so is a source of much good for the countries concerned as well as the United States, but this only proves that the able-bodied Americans, only when they are affected is when we focus on these problems, but we ignore the problems that exist for the disabled body every day in the status quo. And next is the Knowles evidence, which says that in an anarchic world, legitimacy derives largely from brute force, which means that the worldview and the lens that the affirmative exists under requires that we exist under an able-bodied perspective that is able to dominate over the disabled body of the rest of the world. And you go on to the Butler arguments. First, you can group the arguments that they preserve life. The only time we focus on these arguments is when American lives are affected, and that's the Butler evidence, which proves that we forget the thousands of individuals who were killed in the status quo. That was also the argument made in Cross-Ex, and this is what allows for the unending violence that Roy cites to exist, because America privileges itself and arrogates itself the right to kill where anyone it finds them. And next, they say that our utopian politics is not practical. First, the affirmative is not practically speaking. Thereafter, speaking does not change anything. That was Ben's argument. Next is the circumvention arguments. First is that they don't answer the secrecy portion of what. You can go on to signature strikes. I think it's on the norms, though. Campbell piece of evidence, or actually that wasn't Campbell. The signature strike's evidence first is that the executive would only be able to go around the court because the signature strike does not require that he submit a name, because it's only when people are because they only have to strike when people look violent. But it means that he doesn't have to submit in the court. He doesn't have to submit to the court in the first place, which means that he's only able to continue the drone strikes. But also that continues to erode the norms because Russia and China can just signature strike as well.
Yeah.
Hedge, actually norms hedge, okay.
The plan solves effective drone norms. She insists that the plan is able to end groupthink, that people only send legitimate drone requests because they realize the court would constrain any other activities. The plan is able to put laws in the book, which means that we're able to constrain effective countries. The certain piece of when you see evidence is that other states would think twice about adventurous drone policies when they realize the U.S. is adhering to a form of international precedent, which gives them an incentive to step on international institutions because they know they'll be ostracized if the U.S. is following drone usage or drone norms of priority extraterritorial extrajudicial usage, and they weren't. There's no internally for the signature strikes argument. Some are key to Yemen, which is an independent escalation impact to the Horn of Africa, Great Power War, and from anyways, the hedge advantage. They don't get to say which lives we care about or don't care about. They are not psychoanalysts. They have not always or the equal, which is the ethical framework we have introduced in the 2AC, but we don't try to solve that. We shouldn't do so. Even if it's true that some American lives are made more grateful in the status quo, the remedy for this is just voting for whoever saves most lives overall, which is the affirmative. Now, if ideas don't spread, vote out from presumption because their ideas go nowhere. Alternatively, if they do, the epistemology we created is one that supports American hegemony, that is an independent impact turn to the rhetoric of the 1AC, which you should support. The Adelberg evidence is that due process causes legal precedent. Ideally, people should have equal representation under the law. If they don't right now, and it's not perfect, performatively confirmative, means that we should create a better answer and better avenue for legal representation rather than abandoning legal change. The Knowles evidence is that force patterns of military shape international relations, which is true even if it's undesirable. I think this argument is a great example of the utopianism in the next strategy. Holding hands with China doesn't make them stop drone striking the Uyghurs, which means that adherence to international institutions and effective countries are better. They consider the impact of hedge, military power wars, bridge theory, return, solves democratic peace theory, economic growth, etc., which are all the alternative which kills lots of people around the world globally. Adherence to those norms creates better peace. There's no alternative. The U.S. lashes out in place of hegemony, which means that there is only a worse world, and you should vote affirmative to create. You should vote affirmative independently on the epistemological impact of us introducing those impacts into the debate round. Now, the criticism, the role of the ballot is to be a policy stimulator. Decide if the act is good relative to a status quo or competitive alternative. The role of the judge is to be a policy stimulator. The question of what debate should be to maximize its utility. Ask yourself, what pedagogy has the 2NC presented? Why is debate good? Have they made an argument for what education debate produces? I think the only thing who was in this debate is the affirmative with our legal and technical skills evidence, which is the Donahue evidence. It is able to teach us advocacy, legal, technical focus, etc. Let's keep our education as lawyers, business graduates, activists, whatever, because it makes us able to process information more quickly. Even if the top speed that we can process information is different between different people, and I love to be able to process information as quickly as Andrew Markov, we are able to come closer to our individual potential, which means that we can then apply that later to a life. The legal and technical discourse is confusing, and the fact that it's so confusing and difficult to parse out means that people in a high elite position of privilege are able to use it to disregard any criticisms of their actions. If we're able to access that information and we can infiltrate the highest levels of government, business, etc., with effective research and decision-making skills that are promoted by policy stimulation, that's the Donahue evidence, which is the only educational benefit any team is trying to debate. Now, the equality arguments will root them writ large. I think the 2NC as a whole, no true Scotsman fallacy. What is the idea of finding true equality? What does it look like? There is clearly no true equality possible in college debate because it is college debate. Good luck getting into this if you don't go to a college in the first place, which is itself a huge financial privilege. Deaf people can't hear their speeches, blind people can't read the speech talks in Braille, etc. And there's nothing that either team is able to do to create this promoting radical equality. Just creates a Harrison Bergeron world in which equality is expected at the education benefits to be. If exclusion is bad, then we should look to material and to make debate as accessible as possible. But doing so within the debate space is likely just to cause backlash and doesn't create any effective means for reform either. They have a bunch of terms to the alternative. They have conceded this is all pieces of weak evidence about how the best answer to disabilities is legal strategies for policy change and creation. Even if you're going to try to change the seat of rules for how and why debate is able to have accessibility, you need tactical and legal training in order to infiltrate those meetings in the first place to have a good argument to make. They say that we have a model citizen. We don't. Lots of people more successful than us, and lots of slow people are able to do very well debate. There is no model debater. However, the technical skills that are able to be fostered by debate are beneficial ones. The speed debate, the function of technical and legal engagement, good questions, I think, make the speed debate beg the question of the rest of that stuff. You just finished graduate exams for yourself, so I know that you understand the value of arduous, taxing, long hours necessary to really understand something. Debate is able to be a paracosm for how and why we should do that research and incentivize doing more about it by talking more about it and being able to introduce more of it in the debate round. It doesn't create shitty politics debates. Most sections don't go to stupid cheap touch anymore. If it's so stupid, you should be able to explain why it's bad. You can clearly understand the things we're saying because we're not going too fast. If we could, people wouldn't be able to vote for us anyways. The 1MC links to this argument. Moreover, they clearly had audible breath. Even if they slowed down in later speeches, so did we. There's no internal link to this stuff, and there's no way that a policymaker would be able to understand any part of the debate anyways. We shouldn't make debate just accessible to lay people because it's a forum that's able to use things like technical shorthand as a way to create more effective education about new issues and bring a plethora of new ones into debate, which makes us able to better think on our feet and analyze such a wide array of issues rather than retreating the same few words in every debate, which is the problem of politics writ large right now, right? Politics is accessible. Anybody can understand what Obama's saying. That's why people say nothing in Congress, B, because nothing's able to hold them to technical accountability, which is why you should prioritize drop arguments and stuff like that, because it holds people accountable to create a more inclusive standard of logic, which people are able to do better. Lots of people with dyslexia have been able to understand fast a bit like Eric Tucker. There's no perfect equality here, so even if there is a marginal exclusion disadvantage, this model of the education benefits able to outweigh. Plus, they can't solve it anyways, and the material change possible for the avenues we're able to solve it better. Now, the permutation, I think, solves a lot of the residual often from the exclusion stuff, insofar as they have a mechanism that can make debate more equal, more egalitarian, etc. I think we can create all those effective things. We can do the plan, we can do the plan, create an ethic of care, we can do the plan, and recognize invisible disability of the status quo, we can do the plan, and embrace the value of narratives. However, when that is able to relate to material structures, you will need the legal and technical focus promoted by the skills of the 1AC in order to actualize those things. So that was all the economic and material structure necessary to do solve stuff. They say that technical and legal training is bad. I've answered all those arguments, but they have little warrant to most of these things, and you should have better mechanisms for actualizing real change. Yeah, reading evidence is good. You should do that because it's able to foster a more in-depth reading of relationships, etc. You're also doing it throughout the course of the debate anyways. Even if you don't, I think we're pretty far ahead on the truth of this question. They need to have a better alternative for how they make debate more inclusive than just saying it to do so.
Maybe the criticism and then the symmetry strikes right.
I'm sorry, the K and then what?
The symmetry strikes right. Ready? The role of the ballot in this round is to vote for the team that best makes debate accessible. They have not provided a method for increasing accessibility. That means that none of their arguments should be evaluated because there are some people that can't access them. For example, all their arguments about legalism are only applicable if you can become a lawyer. If you cannot become a lawyer, then that means that these arguments are irrelevant. It means that the education and portable skills that they think they provide are not portable skills that are useful for all people. We think that debate should be a space where we can have multiple different types of discussion that allows access for all people. For example, when at the Vanderbilt tournament, I wasn't allowed to, or I couldn't debate the second day because of my impairment, and Joey was forced to forfeit every single round. No, that is a pedagogical potential that we have forgone because of structured debate. We have not allowed these types of skills to be developed because we have created a system where certain people are excluded because of the disabilities and impairments that they have. There's many times when I have not been able to go to a tournament and engage in the type of skills that they're talking about because the tournament has not been accessible. For example, my senior year of high school, I could not travel to the Blake tournament because of my impairment. And 2 weekends ago, I could not travel to the Vanderbilt tournament because of my impairment. These things means that their portable skills are only accessible to certain amounts of people. If they do not create a world in which everyone can access debate, then it means that they are creating a world in which the elites continue to perpetuate the system. Even if we as debaters are able to infiltrate those systems, we're not able to produce any real change because we have been co-opted by the type of legalism and expertism that the 1AC and the 2AC prevented.
Even if we do create change, that only leads to further inaccessibility.
Even if we do create change once we graduate out from debate, it creates more inaccessibility because we have not fundamentally challenged the structures of debate that are exclusionary. Now, your role of the judge is to be an educator. You drove straight from Detroit after graduate exams to come judge this debate. That type of dedication to the activity proves that debate has enormous pedagogical and educational potential. But we have denied access. We've denied access to that. We've denied access to that potential. Now, the form of the 1AC was exclusionary. That was exclusionary. There are certain people that cannot access that form. That means that these people are denied the ability to get this type of education. We think that our alternative is a productive way in order to produce change in the debate community. If we recognize indisability, if we adopt an ethics of care, and if we go for the vision of debate that we have outlined, then that allows us to create this type of political change within the community. Once people start recognizing that disability is a problem in debate, then that is when we can actually create functional change. Now, we can actually create functional change. Now, there's also an argument about the disembodied practices of war that has not been answered throughout the debate. The descriptions of war that they use in the 1C are disembodied. This has not been challenged by the affirmative. That means that they have not incorporated the perspective of the people that are involved in war. That war is a visceral event. War takes place at the level of the body. If we do not view the war through this lens, then it means that we have created a system where war becomes both sanitized and acceptable because it is viewed simply through forms of numbers and utilitarian calculus, not through forms of people that are being killed by drone strikes or people that would be killed in this war. This is an independent disadvantage to their alternative. It's also a reason why their rhetoric about hegemony is not a reason to vote for them because it's the same type of rhetoric used to justify interventions in Iraq and used to justify irresponsible drone strikes in the first place. It also proves the signature strikes argument. If we are only viewing it in terms of calculations, viewing it in terms of war as an event, not war as an embodied event, and that means that Obama, after the plan, would inevitably switch to signature strikes because he doesn't think that striking people is a bad idea. He might think that maybe going against the course is a bad idea, but signature strikes didn't have that because he does not have to submit a name to the kill list, which is what the affirmative does. It means that signature strikes are not viewed by courts. It's not a rubber stamping argument, but rather an argument that he would switch to other forms that are more obstructive because of the way that they have presented war. Now, if we had an embodied view of war and an embodied view of debate, then and we recognize that we cannot separate war, we cannot separate our arguments from our body, then that means that we would solve many of these problems because we would see individuals that are affected by war, we would see individuals that are affected negatively by exclusionary aspects of debate, and when it happens, instead of staying instead of it saying invisible. That means that we are going to be able, that means that we're able to solve. Even if they win all their arguments, the signature strike arguments is a link turn that is a link turn to all of their offense on cases that was not properly answered. They say that Obama would feel like he'd be constrained, but that doesn't answer the argument that signature strikes are not viewed on the court means he could do them. This would first erode norms because signature strikes would be used in places that aren't territorial. That was an argument that Joey said. And second is it would destroy any type of legitimacy that they might gain through the plan because the signature strikes are the worst forms of drone strikes when it comes to legality. It proves that Russia and China would still use these signature strikes against people like Uyghurs and the Chechens. It means that even under their form of legalism, they're not producing a productive form of legal and technical knowledge because their view, because of their descriptions of war, their view of debate is disembodied. When this is allowed to proliferate in the legal and technical spirit, then that means that they are perpetuating systems, but they're both inaccessible, but also actively act to increase this type of violence.
Even if their politics is good, vote negative to allow more people to access.
Even if their politics is good, you should vote negative to allow more people to access that type of politics. We can still have debates with legal terminology, but if we do it in a way that is accessible to people, if we do it in a way that is slowed down and allows people to access it, then more people get that education.
Let's run this bathroom real quick. I tried to teach about it.
Signature strikes are enough for you.
Winning the terminal uniqueness question on the circumvention argument, if Obama feels constrained by the court, he doesn't use it, he won't use the signature strikes, he definitely feels the signature strikes are constrained by the court because they're just a different form of targeted killing, which means there's no link to their terms. There's also no evidence that signature strikes is not constrained by the court. It's targeted killing, so it gets submitted. The court is not understand they've conceded that argument, which solves the impact to their term, not a reason to vote against them because we're all about because this debate has now become about whether or not traditional policy debate is good, which we have the impact term, which means even if our advocacy is not necessarily in 100% solvency, that is not offense against our argument, go to the critique. Both teams agree that exclusion of the disabled is bad. The only disagreement is whether or not we can strategically deploy our privilege remedy status quo structure and perpetuate the exclusion in the first place. We don't demand that the disabled accommodate slow and dyslexic debaters debate without aid to. What we do demand is the preservation of the aspects of debate that are educationally beneficial with speed and technical debating. This is a framing argument for the entire round. Even if some practices are exclusionary, there's an inherent amount of exclusion in everything that we possibly do. If deployment of those exclusionary practices lead to net less exclusion in the status quo, then that means that we solve our utilitarian framework, which they have not contested. They have no defense of a deontological rejection of all inaccessible arguments, which means you prefer our utilitarianism arguments. We should not have to defend things that we have no control over. Architecture is one of these things, bidding in physically inaccessible buildings links just as much as them does as it does to us. The permutation resolves any question of whether or not the policy is committed to recognize the invisibility and the disability. That's the reason we don't into the case. Second, we have impact traditional debate engaging in hyper-technical fast discussion allows the development of skills that allow us to get our hands on a lever of power. They concede that even if you vote negative, you will not support a regime that develops the skills necessary to create change in structural factors like architecture. This determines the uniqueness problems without activists. Well, first in legal jargon, the alternative fails. This is an independent reason to vote affirmative. They have made the argument for us that as an educator, you have exported epistemology onto the rest of the community. The question is whether you vote have to export an epistemology of engaging with law, trying to make things pragmatically better and strategically using things like ableist privilege and circumstance where it can lead to a productive discussion, or whether you vote negative to export an epistemology of care that, while recognizing injustice in the world, has zero method of change in the structure that perpetuate the privilege in the status quo. The role of ballot is to simulate policy. This is what makes our advocacies mutually exclusive and ours net beneficial. You cannot vote for their role of the ballot and ours. Don't vote because you won't be voting for our politics, which means you can't vote negative for our politics. If their role of the ballot is accessibility, then it is not necessarily not technical jargon, not critical thinking, not speed, which are all dissads to their framework argument that I'll do below. Additionally, the extinction dissent is a dissent of framework because they have conceded because they have proposed an alternative role of the ballot to simulating policy. Their framework necessarily excludes simulating policy because it always focuses on the inaccessible aspects of debate and how we can reform the debate community. That is not what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on a policy out there that is doing things like creating the architecture that we have to debate in that is uniquely inaccessible. There's a bigger impact to the legal manifestation of inaccessible things than there is to debating a speed than there is to including people in a debate round. Additionally, there is zero mutual exclusivity with their advocacy and ours. They're only being asked specifically to speed and technical jargon, which A, we impact turn B should not be the reason for rejecting advocacy because there's no right of what is accessible and not. This justifies them simply voting for whatever team goes marginally slower, bad decision-making model. They benefit to the permutation is the case. They consider that there's a linear impact to the skills that we create inside a hyper-technical fast debate round would be different if they couldn't understand it, that they're flowing my speech is the reason of the responding line by line, which means this could have been a productive debate round with but has now been reduced to potential repetition. The ableism indicts and impacts. They say legalism is only applicable if we become a lawyer, but you should not sacrifice legal education because some people cannot be lawyers. Participate in an inaccessible activity to fix the structures that prevent people from being able to access the position of lawyer in the first place. This is a lane turn to their alternative. The only way to change the system is with legalism. The perm solves the direction of the change, which means that their arguments about not creating good change are totally irrelevant because we also institute an ethic of care just within the legal system that you must you should not vote negative access or education that's mutually exclusive, speed and technical debating is net better, which is a linear impact to the advocacy of affirmative, which is the reason to vote affirmative. They say the 1C was exclusionary, the 1C was 2 cross 1. The cross-sex analysis I did about not having braille and the exclusion is selectively good. That is the impact turn debate that I did both. Additionally, vote for our edition of the debate as a training ground for legal activists, which even if that policy is exclusionary, it is net better for exclusionary practices because we learn to change that. You should sacrifice the moral integrity of the debate, the community, if that's what it comes down to, for pragmatic legal change. They say disembodied war with death obviously outweighs that their utilitarianism Kavinsky argument. Even if we exclude the viewpoints of some people, their death is worse. We should focus on protecting the disembodied subject rather than incorporating their viewpoint only to be annihilated by nuclear warfare. The alternative also does not solve the view of disembodied war where you're winning a term. The uniqueness question, you prefer the affirmative because of our participates in the politics. The international order is shaped by a disembodied view of warfare. The only way to solve that is work within it. Additionally, the alternative obviously doesn't do anything about that. We solve signature strikes. Their argument that we can't separate war from the body has literally zero impact. There is no external impact, and they don't foster a change in the viewpoint of policymakers because there's no spillover, which means they can't solve war in the first place. Now, I'm going to clarify why speed is a good thing. First, all of their insights are arbitrary. There's no bright line before what is too fast or accessible enough for your exportation of this epistemology. Results in teams just trying to be slower than their opponent, which uniquely kills legal education, which is a unique impact to the affirmative innocent everyone. No impact, obviously, physical ability gives people a significant advantage, but that's not a reason to vote them down. Debate is a competitive activity, but that competition is life is inevitable, which they have not answered. Additionally, speed increases education, allows us to debate further in depth about arguments, and analyze the multiplicity of warrants and avenues for discussion internal of the issues about which we debate. I'm not going to do extensive analysis here, and I'm not getting here with much time because they have conceded all of this in the 2-1. There is zero warrant for why speed or technical debating is bad. The only thing that you have on your flow is that speed and technical debating is good for creating legal policy. That is something that the negatives role of the ballot uniquely excludes and incentivizes something that they don't do that.